It's time to begin with the IT session. And we have with us moderator VK Matthews, the founder and executive chairman, IBS Group chartered member. He is the founder and executive chairman of the IBS Group of companies. Matthew founded IBS in 1997 with a vision to redefine the way the global travel, transportation, and logistic industries manage their business. He is a thought leader in the global animation industry and is a sought-after speaker at various international events. I request you to come to the panel, sir. Once again, let me take the honor of inviting VK Matthews, sir. Thank you for coming. I also like to invite our other panelists of speakers, P. Chandrasekharan, the chairman of NASSCOM, executive vice chairman, Cognizing Technology Solution India Private Limited, Aruna Jayanti, CEO of Capgemini India, Ravi Gururaj, chairman and co-founder of Frictionless Ventures, K. Nandakumar, president and CEO of Suntech Business Solutions Private Limited, Professor Rajesh S. Upadhyayulla, chairperson of IIMK Kochi campus. Thank you so much.
So my friends, colleagues on the dais, and friends, ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pleasure today to chair this session. We have more than 2 hours at our disposal. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot, the entrepreneurs, the aspiring entrepreneurs, the companies which are all very keen to expand and grow, we cannot expect to get a more distinguished, more eminent panel than what we have today. They have actually accepted our invitation because they want to participate in the passion and the energy that we have been showcasing. In fact, Chandrasekhar, the chairman of NASSCOM, Aruna, again a member of Executive Council of NASSCOM, as well as the CEO of Capgemini India, and Ravi Gururaj, who will be joining us shortly. He's on his way. He's stuck in traffic. He heads the Product Council of NASSCOM. All of us were in Kerala, in Komaragam, last weekend for the NASSCOM annual retreat. So it is great. Of course, I must thank them wholeheartedly for taking time out to come again and be part of it. And of course, we have Nandakumar and also Rakesh. They will give their perspectives. So the way in which we will have this session run today is that we will have most of our speakers to share their views on what it means to actually start something up and then develop and build it as an IT enterprise. We will have probably about 10 minutes. I think it will be a mistake if we don't have these speakers to speak, because it will be invaluable to listen to them. And then we have about an hour of question and answers, which I think will be very interesting. So I would like to straight away go on to set the theme, the tone for the 2-hour session that we are actually going to have. Startup to IT enterprise, the digital way. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause to Ravi Gururaj, the only man to get an applause so far. Ravi Gururaj is the chairman of NASSCOM Product Council. So, getting on to the startup to IT enterprise, the digital way. Just to give you a view as the global IT industry, as you would know, the IT industry is about, as of this year, is about $3.7 trillion, including devices, data centers, enterprise software, IT services, telecom services, and so on. The last, from 2008 to 2014, the numbers that we have, the actual growth has been slightly less than 2.5%. However, the good news is that from 2015, the current year, to 19, the forecast is about 3.4%. So it is going to grow faster than before. The size of this IT industry is very, very big, and you will get to see how it is going to make even more difference. And if I really look at the same thing for the Indian IT industry, when the global IT industry has been growing 2.4% or less, we have been actually growing about 10 to 12% in the past. And we are expected to grow the next 5 years, 15 to 19, probably greater than that, maybe about 13%. Out of this, IT services is considerable part, BPM, and then followed by ER&D and some hardware part. For India, even at $118 billion in size, this is substantial for us. This is roughly about 25% of all of our exports and about 8% of our GDP, and very good, meaningful job creator. And also, through the about 100 ITSEs in Tier 2 and Tier 3, it is also, making sure inclusive growth. The digital future, and this is, I'm going to have about 4 or 5 slides on the digital future. We had, in fact, half a day last week in our retreat, facilitated by McKinsey, and they were actually, giving their view after doing a lot of research as how this is going to disrupt, this is going to impact the life going forward, and thus the opportunity for all the aspiring entrepreneurs as well as the ones which are already on that course. The digital has opened up a plethora of opportunities for entrepreneurs across the globe. So when I say digital, digital means all forms and uses of data, information, and technology, and which is much more than what we traditionally know as IT. Today, if you really look at, in olden days, an enterprise had more IT in them than probably its employees or the customers or the citizens at large. But today, if you really look at the technology that we carry with ourselves in our smart devices, smart cars, and smart telephones, and smart televisions, so the technology that is available to the citizens is much more. And in fact, if you really look at the SMAC, that is social media, mobility, analytics, as well as cloud, plus Internet of Things and advanced robotics, all of those actually form the nexus of forces, which is actually keeping this digital paradigm very buoyant. And in a digital enterprise, ladies and gentlemen, for all of the companies and the companies that we actually serve companies, it is the question to ask is, how do we help the companies achieve leadership in an increasingly digital world? And how do we make sure that the assets, the digital assets that an enterprise is creating is actually going to have greater impact and value for the enterprise than the physical assets that traditionally we normally have. So a digital enterprise leverages digital technology for transforming its internal and external operations to stay ahead of competition. Now, what is the digital impact? And this is a very interesting slide. Technologies will create disproportionately high value beyond its boundaries. For example, 3.7 trillion revenues of IT industry. And in fact, the kind of impact, value that it creates across the boundaries is expected to be 4 to 9 times McKinsey forecast, which means about 16 to 39 trillion dollars of value getting created. And when this kind of permeation takes place, what actually happens, and this will cause the emergence of disruptive, non-traditional players. There was an example which was very well illustrated. That is, if you take the top 20 banks in the world, starting from Wells Fargo all the way to RBS, at 52 billion, not the assets under management, actual revenue, as well as for RBS about 12 billion. If I take PayPal, Alibaba, Tesco, NTT Docomo, and Facebook, if you really look at their play in that sector is actually about 12 billion. In other words, the top 20 banks is actually replaced. One of them is going to be replaced by the play the Alibabas and the Facebook will have in the financial services sector. So this is significant kind of change that is actually taking place. And again, the digital impact. 25% of existing enterprise IT spend will vanish in near future. I'm talking about in the next 4 years. This is going to happen. This is a reality we actually feel. I'm sure Chandra will endorse it, so also TCS and Wipro will endorse it. If I really look at FY14, 672 billion in financial services, 91% is traditional IT, which includes infrastructure, package software, BPO, consulting, and so and so. And that is going to shrink to 536, actually becoming 67% of the total in FY18, where the 264 billion, 33% will become digital IT that includes legacy digital integration, SMAC, and cyber security. Information security is going to become very important. So actually this again is taken from the financial services side. 50% reduction in branches is going to take place. And again, 85% processes will be automated. Today it's only about 30%, and 97% of the transactions shifted to digital channels. And this is bound to happen, huge opportunity. If I take the same example from my line of business, which is travel, transportation, logistics, I can very clearly say 90% of the high street travel agencies will vanish. There's a huge, huge focus on disintermediation. And so this is an issue that we need to address for some of the big companies who actually play there in the IT services, but at the same time, massive opportunity for the industry. Another one, the digital impact on industries. I was talking about the other one verticals. The digital disruptions to affect industries differently. It varies from low to high. I would say digital to the extent either digital or death or perish. For example, so that is low to very, very high. Digital within, say for example, or in certain sectors, you would actually have targeted solutions inside. And in some other sectors, it is end-to-end digitalization. But in some of the sectors like media and retail, it is going to be absolutely, totally disruptive. It has now shifted, digital has shifted from a hygiene factor to a survival means. So that's what digital or death. And that is where the play is, and that's where your opportunities are. And the digital impact on enterprises come on 4 different dimensions. It's very interesting to see. Products, digital channels, and more and more end-to-end processes, digitized processes, and data-driven decisions. Again, here, mobility as a service replaces the car. I'm quite sure most of us, if you have heard about Uber and the company Uber, which basically facilitates sharing of cars. Ladies and gentlemen, the forecast is that the total number of cars used in the world will significantly reduce going forward. The reason why I have a car for myself is because it is available at my disposal. But the number of hours that I use the car is not more than, an expensive car, not more than an hour a day. Is it possible for us to improve the asset utilization without compromising any of my convenience? A car, when the car comes to my office, it is parked in the garage, in the car parking area. And at home, if I'm living in an apartment, it is actually again put in the parking lot. If the car can be available at my disposal, then I don't need to own the car. And the forecast is that most of these platforms to transform products to services. But I'm quite sure in, say, 15, 20 years from now, our children would say, once upon a time, people used to own cars because they had to travel from A to B at their own choice. And again, all of this, the kind of disruption, in my village, the village that I come from, probably there are about 5 or 6 branches, bank branches. There will be an SBT, there will be an SBI, there will be a Federal Bank, there will be a Catholic Syrian Bank, there will be a Union Bank and a Bank of Baroda or whatever. Do we really need that many banks? And the answer is clearly not. Most of the retail banking which the community is going to actually engage a bank with or a branch with is going to become digitized. And again, if I just extrapolate that by about 15 years, that is a boy who is now 25 or a girl who is 25 today, 10 today, is going to become 25. I do not believe that they have to ever go to a bank. All of the products and services which the bank has to give will become digitized. So 50% of the bank branches will be shut, 75% reduction in dealer visits, and digitized processes, reduced staff cost, increased efficiency, data-driven decisions, new use cases for ATM. I was just wondering, why should ATMs be now branded? Why should ATMs be branded? It can be a great business for somebody to actually run ATMs. And again, is ATMs really required? Do you really need to have hard currencies? If there is somebody who is able to actually dispense currency, for example, if ATMs are required, if somebody is able to dispense it on behalf of all of the banks and electronically communicated, integrated, and the kind of efficiencies that is it's going to bring is huge. And again, it redefines what activities, ladies and gentlemen, we will be engaged, our next generation will be engaged in creating meaningful wealth and progress. It's going to be, all of that is going to be driven through this, and we can clearly see, and it is coming. Don't be under the impression that this is going to actually wait. 2007, iPhone did not exist. Today, without iPhone and all of the apps that we actually keep, or a smart device and all the apps that we keep, we cannot actually think of and surviving a day. So the need has been created. Similarly, Kodak has been an exceptional company about 7 years back. It is non-existent today. So this is happening, and this is the opportunity all of you are going to see. Now let's actually look a little bit briefly on the India opportunity, and this is very close to us, and this is where I was telling Chandra that all the deficiencies and the shortcomings that we have, inefficiencies that we see, all of that is actually an opportunity as well. So if you look at, we picked up these areas, healthcare. In India, 1/3 doctors per capita compared with China or Brazil. And the second bullet is even more interesting, 43% absentee rate of health workers in our country. Education, 88% of the class 8 students in rural India unable to read a class 1 text. 500 million without secondary education or skills training. On the energy sector, if I really look at 24% electricity lost in transmission and distribution. 300 million people lack access to electricity. Agriculture, an interesting point, 20 million tons of grain lost per annum due to poor warehousing. That can feed our 100 million population year-round. So these are all opportunities, and digital can play immense role. So, one more slide and then I'm closing. Widespread adoption of technology will herald the digital era. Today, we have about 100 to 130 million mobile internet users. It can grow 7-folds to 700 to 900 million. 2 million SMEs on cloud, that can become 10-folds. 60 million smartphone users, that can become 700 million. Huge opportunities. 1.5 billion electronic transactions, that means digital payments. That can significantly go to about 12 billion. And all of us sitting here, all of you dreaming of creating that enterprise of future, will be able to contribute to this. And again, the connected number of devices, Internet of Things, that also can have exponential growth going forward. Internet of Things basically improves the efficiency of operations, whether it is energy saving or manpower cost reduction or whatever. And the last slide. So I was actually trying to give you a picture of the world of IT globally, the world of IT India, the digital opportunities and the threats, as well as the India play that is going to be abundantly available. And then building an enterprise. This is, again, coming back to our topic, that is from a startup to building an IT enterprise, very different from initiating a startup or becoming a startup, to build an enterprise. So I think expertise over enthusiasm. As a startup entrepreneur, what you have is a great idea or an idea you think or I think is great and a lot of energy and enthusiasm, but when you want to scale, you need to have expertise over that entrepreneurial seal. The second one is we need to build capabilities. Very few entrepreneurs who have started straight from the colleges will be able to scale a business. They need to hire people who have done it before. They need to have professional CEOs. So capability, when I talk about it, is not just people, it is process, governance, leadership, all of those. Again, the next one is we have to continuously check whether the value that we are proposing is remaining relevant. Valuable companies, ladies and gentlemen, are the ones which does or which provides, actually does business or produce products and services which are meaningful to their audience, to their customers. And your relevance is a measure of your growth and significance, the size of revenue that you generate. And valuable companies are relevant and significant. So that's an important one. And developing brand equity and sales capability, you have to really check whether you have the sales capability, do you have the brand? And is your leadership actually investing in or creating capacity, or they're internally engaged in basically solving internal problems? So building an enterprise, I would say if you're thinking of building a global enterprise, you will have to really get people who can build that. And usually the entrepreneurs who have started are not the people who will be able to actually do that, typically, because what the characteristics, traits of an entrepreneur is different from a professional manager who is actually doing this work as a job and execute and excel. Yeah? So that's what it is. So this is the background. Now, the way in which we want to run this panel is that I will invite the speakers to come and share their views. And thereafter, so we will be having slightly different, I think all of them will cover different parts of the same problem. And then we will have a lot of questions, and we have plenty of time to actually answer the questions. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And I now would invite Chandrasekhar. He's also the Executive Vice Chairman of Cognizant, as well as the Chairman of NASSCOM. I invite Chandra to come and speak to the audience. Thank you.
Thank you, VK. It's wonderful to be in Kerala within a span of 1 week. Just spent 5 days last weekend, as VK was mentioning, and so good to be here. Who wouldn't like to feel happy to be in God's own country? So nice to be here. And that too, to be discussing and sharing thoughts on what is the most relevant topic of the current times. Now, every day when I look at the newspaper, even today when I was on the way here looking at the Economic Times, earlier IT used to have half a page or a few columns, and mostly it used to talk about big companies, whether it is TCS, Cognizant, or Infosys. But nowadays, the IT page is almost full page and talks about only entrepreneurship type of opportunities and what's happening in that area. So it's really exciting times for us to be discussing and deliberating on how we can move ahead as an industry as well as a country. You know, even during tea earlier today, we were talking about how do you measure the success of the industry. In the past, we always used to talk about, hey, how many people do you have in the organization? But I'm sure the time will come very, very soon, if it's not already, is what is the value you are bringing, how many IP your organization owns, and or what's the valuation of your company. I think the conversation will shift very, very rapidly. For that to happen, you know, a lot of things need to be aligned. You know, we need to say that for any good thing to happen, we need the stars to be aligned, right? So what are those stars that need to be aligned for realizing our dreams of India as a destination of innovation, a destination of entrepreneurship? What are those stars? You know, it is those stars, the stars of opportunities. As VK mentioned, there are plenty of opportunities for us to showcase our innovation and entrepreneurship capabilities. I'll talk about that. Then the stars of, you know, is it the right time? I can't think of a better time for us to really quickly scale and demonstrate that a lot of things can be accomplished through entrepreneurial spirit that exists in the country. So from a timing perspective, this is the most appropriate time. And also, do we have the right solutions, right mindset, right set of skills? I think so. We boast of so many bright graduates coming out of college. There is an urgency. There's a sense of urgency amongst the youth in the country to do something different, to venture something on their own, take risks, and we have the potential. We have the mind share, right? So this is, I think, we have the blend of right skills with the right talent to develop the right solutions for the world to capture what we think is the potential of this industry. And also there is a need in terms of partnerships. Even the bigger companies are looking for smaller companies to come and add value, give them the IP so that they can leverage the IP to deliver solutions and services. So there's a lot of partnership opportunities that exist today, which can be win-win, both for the startups as well as for the large companies. And right ecosystem, whether it is the innovation ecosystem that's there in the country, particularly we saw that last week abundantly, that it's present in the state of Kerala. And it's not just the entrepreneurship, the innovation that's happening in the state is probably second to none. So there's a lot of potential. So there's a right ecosystem. So if you really look at all these stars of opportunities, time, ecosystems, skills, everything is coming together nicely. I think it's time that we put our minds together and then realize what is the potential that we can take to the world. So just elaborating a little bit more on the opportunities, right? If I look at the opportunity, today we are actually witnessing what I call as a once-in-a-decade opportunity. Technology is clearly disrupting the business models. It is quite disruptive. What we saw 10, 11 years ago through the internet, we are seeing it through SMAC and Internet of Things. It creates a new set of opportunities. Just observe what happened last week. Thanksgiving weekend is the biggest day for retailers in the US. The in-store sales actually dropped by 10%. So Black Friday sales actually dropped by 10%. But the Cyber Monday, which is the online sales, I haven't seen the official figures yet, but from whatever I hear, should have gone up by about 20%. So it has more than compensated the loss in the in-store sales. More and more consumers are shifting to the convenience of shopping online. And it's a hard fact, right? But how do you effectively service the customers when they are going to be buying online? What type of information that they will be looking for? What type, as a product manufacturer, what type of information you need to have about those consumers? All these things become very, very important so that you can be a lot more successful in reaching out to your consumers online. And the millennial mindset, whether you are dealing with, even if you are running an enterprise, whether you are dealing with your own employees who are millennials, who have a different approach to the work, and the way they interact is very, very different. Or whether you are talking to your consumers, again, they are millennials. Or even if you're talking to your customers, they are not the old school way of doing business. So they have a new approach to doing business, taking decisions. So if you're talking to your own customers, those interactions are very, very different. So if you really look at the interactions that happens between business to consumers or business to business or enterprise to employees, everything is changing around us. And that creates an immense opportunities for people who have some bright ideas, who are very innovative, and who really want to make a big difference leveraging this technology. The advantage that I see is, again, this is something that I was having a light conversation with Vicky as we were walking into this hall. 10, 15 years ago, if you want to start something on your own, it was more likely to be outside of technology, right? But that required a lot of capital if you're going to be in manufacturing. But today, technology provides a lot more entrepreneurship opportunities than any other sector. And we are uniquely positioned as a country because we have such skills in abundance. And if we can hone those skills and bring right thought leadership and create a demonstrable product or a platform, then sky is the limit for what we can achieve. So the opportunities are out there. And timing-wise, I can't think of a better time. If I really look at India as a country, the exposure that we have in terms of technology, we are on par with the rest of the world. I still remember when I started the career, I used to punch cards to write a program, right? But we were lagging behind so much in technology compared to the Western world. But today, that's not the case. Probably we are even ahead than most other nations in the world, actually. So we are current as far as technology expertise is concerned. In many cases, we are actually leading with the research work that's happening in various prestigious academic institutions. And also, the millennial population. There are a number of statistics that go to prove that India would have the youngest workforce in the whole world, right? That means a lot, because we have young, energetic people who are very hungry, who want to do something different, who want to look at businesses differently. And if we can address, if we can leverage that young workforce to create new solutions, new intellectual property, at the same time use that workforce to really think differently so that we can be a lot more successful outside of India as we take those solutions, I think we have a very, very unique advantage, both as a consuming nation as well as a producing nation. So timing-wise, I think we have the right blend of skills and consumers that we need to be successful in the global marketplace. And also, if I really look at it, I talked about how consumers prefer online buying. We are at a juncture where the physical identity of the person needs to be sort of matched with the virtual identity. So if you really need to understand your customers, consumers better, it's not enough if you just know their name, social security number, or their address, but you really need to understand their tastes, what type of products that they prefer. So there are so many ways that we can really understand the customers better by really looking at their own, habits in terms of what music they listen, what is the, social media conversations. So there's so many information about, consumers that are available out there, which I call as the virtual identity. So if you can create a platform that can bring the physical identity and the virtual identity of a consumer together, then you will definitely be well informed in terms of taking the right product or solutions or service to your end customer. And I think VK articulated this very nicely. We are in the age of a collaborative economy. The concept of ownership is going away. Now, I was just reading a case study on Airbnb. This is a online platform where it offers accommodation for people who are traveling to various places. And if you have a house, say, in Komarakam, and which is remaining idle, you can just subscribe to Airbnb, and actually they will put it on their site, and somebody who wants to spend a holiday in Komarakam, they can actually rent your place, right? So, but it is really causing a revolution. What took Hilton hotels over 60 years, Airbnb is able to offer more accommodation at more locations in the matter of just less than 3 to 4 years. So that is how technology is changing the way business is done, right? There are newer ideas that are coming up each and every day, and it's quite exciting to see. So as VK mentioned, the concept of ownership will go. I was even reading another article. Why do you want to build a holiday home in one of the hill stations? And the article was talking about people prefer to buy experience. You go to different places, buy experience, rather than investing heavily in buying a property in the location that you choose. So buying experience will become a lot more preferred holiday, way to spend time rather than just going to a holiday home, which is sort of fixed. So the consumer taste will vary, and especially with the new generation of people growing up, the way they grow up, their preferences will be very, very different. And we need to be sensitive and use these as opportunities to create solutions. So this is the most appropriate time for us to really think of something out of the world. And we also need to have a right approach in terms of how we need to build an organization. I think it's quite exciting to really look at the opportunities out there, but it's very, very difficult to put those ideas into a real life enterprise that can be sustained for a long time. My sincere advice to all the budding entrepreneurs is don't be in it for a quick money. We all read so much about all the success stories, but that's not reality. For every success story, there are probably 10 or 15, failed ones that we don't hear about. But I'm not discouraging you, but there is success. But when you start an enterprise, be there, at least mentally, to be there for the long haul. Create a sustainable organization. It is not just the idea that is going to make it successful. You need to really work very hard in terms of getting the right teams together to run that as a successful enterprise. So even if you really look at deep into those organizations, those who have started as a small company and then who ended up being very big, you would see that thread of creating a sustainable organization, creating the right type of management infrastructure, and the right kind of support and guidance that they got all along while building that organization. All those things are important. I'm sure Ravi will spend a lot of time talking about the ecosystem for entrepreneurship in today's context. So, if you want to start a new company, money is not the constraint at all. There are so many people willing to invest if you have a good idea. But as an entrepreneur, you need to be careful in terms of which angel you go with for an investment or with VC firm you go with for an investment. You don't want to approach them just for their money. What type of capability that they bring as part of an investor in your organization. Do they have the ability to help you to reach markets? Do they have the technology sort of expertise to guide you in the right direction? All those things are important. So if you're really looking for funding and external help, you need to really look at these aspects. No, don't go to VCs just for money. So those are some of the things that you need to keep in mind as you start scaling your organization and creating a sustainable organization. But in terms of right solutions, there are plenty. Now, if I think of financial services, there is so much of need for fraud analytics, right? Or if I look at the case of healthcare with the Internet of Things, people are now talking about connected healthcare. How do we really get the devices to interact so that we can administer the right type of interventions for the patient in a hospital? Or even if you really look at, digital India, people are now talking about, today morning I was talking about all of us need to have Aadhaar information logged with the gas companies to get our gas cylinders. So government is really putting it on a high gear in terms of enhancing the citizen services, and the only way they plan to do that is using the digital media. So that creates immense opportunities. We have already created the Unique Identification Authority, well, the UID everybody has, right? But how do you leverage this UID to create layer-life applications? How do we really create applications so that citizens' services can be easily taken to people who are in need of those services? So that creates a lot of opportunities. So in terms of solutions and services, you need to really look around us and then see what is appropriate based on the skill that you have, and then launch on that venture. I'm sure you will be very, very successful. And when I talk about entrepreneurship, it's not that you need to do everything on your own. No, even large companies, even in Cognizant, we look for partnerships. Internally we have our own entrepreneurial ecosystem where we fund some of the ideas that our own associates bring to the table. But we are also open to investing in companies who have some bright ideas. So we can leverage the IP that you are creating. So that way, larger companies can give access to your ideas, and you can bring the innovation spirit that the larger companies need, so that the larger companies can be a lot more nimble in the way they take solutions and services to marketplace. So it's really a win-win partnership. So as an entrepreneur, I would encourage you to look for such partnerships that can really help you reach the end consumer faster. And last but not the least, the ecosystem. And when I think of ecosystem, I can't think of a better place than Kerala. Even Ravi was mentioning, Ravi is part of the NASCOM 10K startup program and the product council, and he would vouch for it. The type of the spirit, the entrepreneurial enthusiasm that is prevailing here. Last week we met with about 20 new young entrepreneurs who had very, very bright ideas. And all of them were really ably supported by the ecosystem here, whether it is the education system or the initiative of Smart Village right in this town itself. So all these things are really helping in giving shape to new ideas that young people bring to the fore. And Cochin particularly, even I'm cognizant, right? When we established our operations here, Joe is here, there's always an urge to do something different. We operate out of 10 cities, but when we established the Cochin Center, Joe mentioned saying that, hey, we don't want to be another also ran type of a center. We want to create some unique capabilities. So right from the inception, we kept very, very different approach, the way we deliver services. Today, in Cochin, it's our second largest mobility center. It is the largest big data center of excellence that we have in the organization. So we are able to attract good talent. There is a spirit, of entrepreneurship. There is a spirit of innovation that's very, very prevalent in this state, in this town. So I think we should leverage that to the advantage of furthering the entrepreneurial ecosystem in the state. I'm sure if we do that, then this can be the next Silicon Valley that we can aspire to be. So I can go on and on, but my final word of advice to all the budding entrepreneurs is really think big, start small, fail quickly, don't worry about failure, but scale fast. So that's a success mantra. Keep that in mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chandra. Very interesting insights and some of the key messages from his speech. I think all of you should remember that as a takeaway. One that I would remember is that please do not start something just for making money or quick glory. All of that will come along. That will come. But I think you should really look at what will make a significant difference to the way in which we live. I think that's very, very, very important. Okay, now I would request my friend Aruna Jayanti, the CEO of Capgemini, to address you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here in Cochin. When Mr. Matthew called me 2-3 weeks ago and said, will you come here? It didn't take me even 5 seconds to say yes. I mean, it's always a pleasure to come back to Cochin. Thank you all for the opportunity. I heard the topic, around of this conference around entrepreneurship, and I thought by any classic definition of entrepreneurship, I don't fit in. Okay? We belong to what one would typically term as the large corporates. But if anybody said I'm not an entrepreneur, I would be reasonably offended. Okay? Because I believe in my heart and mind, I am one. And I believe I run my company like that. And I look for all the qualities of entrepreneurship in all of my leaders. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about my experience, even though it's in a large corporate, around what is it about creating a strong new business. At the end of the day, even large corporates have to run like bunch of small businesses somehow that come together and leverage the big power of one. Okay, so putting it all together, and the sum of the whole is is bigger than all of the individual parts. And in today's world, that's so important because it's no longer good enough to be where you are as a large corporate, and every day the business is changing. So it's extremely important for us to be really agile, nimble, and adapt to the opportunities that are there around us. And you heard both Matthew and Chandra talk about all of the opportunities, the digital age, the way it is changing. And it is so easy for us to become irrelevant if we are not agile, nimble, and entrepreneurial in what we do. So, and a large part of our time is really spent in looking at these ideas that are around us. And there are lots of them, you saw that. Looking at them, evaluating them, and figuring out really how can we address those opportunities. So I have just 4 or 5 points that I'd like to talk about. First, in terms of what is it that we look for when we are looking for that idea and in making it successful. And I can tell you, for every idea that I have, I can tell you Chandra has it, Wipro has it, TCS has it, everybody has it. So if you think that your idea is the greatest and the most unique, I think you've got to think twice. How many of you think your idea is the greatest? And nobody else has it? Okay. So I can tell you, somebody else has that idea. Okay? So first, let's talk about what is it then that really differentiates, and that's the key part of it. So when people come to me and say, we should do this, Gartner says this, Forrester says this, NASSCOM says this, this is what the latest thing from McKinsey is, and this is the hype cycle, and these are the opportunities. The questions you ask is, okay, fine, but there are another, 1 lakh people at least reading the same reports that we are reading, and then looking at these opportunities. So what makes us really special and different? And that's the tricky part. And then when somebody comes to me with that, it's like an acid test. I ask them 4 or 5 questions. Number 1 is, why should I listen to you? Why should I listen to you versus the next guy who has that same idea? Which means, what is so special about you? How are you going to differentiate? And I tell them, tell me in exactly 2 minutes, or even less, in 90 seconds, how you're going to sell it to me. And I'm sure you all are familiar with this term. We call it the elevator pitch. If you can't tell me and get my attention in 90 minutes around why your idea is better than anybody else's, I think there is a problem. Okay, which means that you absolutely have zeroed it down to what is in it for me as a customer. Okay, and I know you all hear this term KYC, which is what all the banks are after these days in financial services. But to me, that's very important. It's all about knowing your customer and knowing what gets to them. You look at e-commerce space. I mean, there are many, many things. There's Amazon. People would say, okay, Amazon is there. Okay, why do we bother? They've got the market, and how can we get into that? The entry barriers are so high at some point, but there's still another one. There's Flipkart, there's Snapdeal. There'll be another 5 that come there, and then we'll still make it successful. So it's not about the idea being unique. It's more about the idea, what is that absolute difference that you're able to capture that your customer is not getting today. Okay, it's that little pain point that we're trying to address, and that's what we look for. And I can tell you that is very difficult, because as I said, even when we look at our services market, whether you talk about mobility or any of the smart stack and big data and analytics, everybody has that idea. But to say that, why is that analytic solution from us so different from somebody else's solution? It's probably a very, very, very small difference. And most of it really revolves around, how does it appeal to Mr. Customer, and does it address a pain point of his or not? And I think that is the acid test that we look for. The second point that we look for beyond the idea and the differentiating value of the idea is all around, okay, it's nice, but are we ever going to make money out of it? And are we going to make big money out of it? Or are we going to spend so much investment and time in it that it's not going to really pay off? And I think that's also important. Of course, for all of you, you'll say, yeah, we know how to make money. We'll get a great valuation, and we'll get out of it at some point of time. And there's always an angel investor or a venture capitalist to fund you. That's one way. But I think at the end of the day, the idea has to stand for itself and then start to make money. It's true also for us. I mean, there are so many ideas that we think are great and different, and we give it up after 1 or 2 years because we don't know how really to monetize the value of that piece of it. Okay. The third point, which I think is very, very important, especially for small companies, small entrepreneurs, is that it's about, okay, how do you reach the market? And that is where I think it's easier in e-commerce. But if you're really looking at a product company, I think the big one is, how are we going to reach the market, and that is extremely difficult to, for anybody to start setting up a big sales force, to get out there and sell it. That's hard part of it. And I do find that that's where what Chandra and others talked about in terms of partners, the ecosystem, to even leverage the venture capitalists in order to be able to get you that first customer is very important. I remember when we started in India and we started a new service. We were not very big at that time. And when we started a new service, there was one that we worked with within one of Canada's largest aircraft manufacturer. They came to India, and then we looked at it and said, gosh, we've never done this before. Yeah. But we knew, conceptually we knew how to do it. I didn't have a single reference. We didn't know, by any logic, we should have just said, forget it, we can't do this, we can't be in this business. But we thought about it and we said, we know we haven't done it, but I also know that nobody else has done it. Okay, so in that sense, competitively, we are all in the same boat. So we talked to the guy who came over and said, look, we haven't done it, but I can assure you nobody else has done it, but we know how to do it. And we spent 2 days in describing to him how we will do it, what will define success and how we need their help. I took a big chance at it, but by telling him that, we have no reference, we have nothing at all. But after, the end of 2 days, he just looked at me and said, I know you're committed. I know you will put your heart and soul into it and deliver it for me. So let's go ahead. And this was 8-10 years ago. They're still our customer. One of our biggest customers, and really done well for them. So I think it's really, and of course that spawns off new business. I think that getting that first customer and treating him as a partner, telling him that, look, I need you. I haven't done it before, but there's something in it for both of us, and let's do it together. And I think that's going to be extremely critical. Of course, today you can rely on VCs and a whole lot of others to help you also find that one and give you, some assistance there. The fourth point is that at the end, you're passionate about it. You're the entrepreneur. You want to start something new, but you can't do it all alone, and then you'll need a few other people with you. And I find that. It's the same again in a large organization. We have the ideas, but where do you find the team that actually is willing to put their heart and soul into it and then go ahead? I'll give you one example. We were going to start something, this was 3 years ago, in engineering services. Okay, so that's, again, NASSCOM says that's the hottest new thing, and it'll grow bigger than the traditional outsourcing. It's a big market, it's untapped. Relatively untapped, though there are a lot of people already in India doing it. And when we started to do it, I was looking for somebody that I could hire who understands that business. I knew there was an opportunity, but if you put me in front of a customer, I probably can't talk beyond 1 minute on that topic. So we had to find somebody who was really good and could execute it. And I interviewed at least 7-8 guys from the industry who could lead this business. And finally, one guy said, I said to him, you have got all these great ideas. Are you really going to be able to do it, you think? And what if the market goes bad? And, what if it doesn't turn out to be the way you think it would be? He said, you know what? Don't pay me. Don't pay me a salary. I'm willing to bet my entire salary that I will make this successful. Okay? And that, to me, one statement decided for me that this is the guy. He was not just, he knew what needed to be done, but beyond that, he was so committed that he said, he thought like an entrepreneur, and he said, I'm willing to put my entire, compensation on line for this. Of course, we didn't do that. Of course, we hired him. We didn't put his entire compensation on line. Typically, companies like us have, 40% variable, not the entire 100%. But to me, it was the principle of how he thought and what we did, and really that's what I think you need to find, people equally committed like yourselves who would really go that extra mile and make that happen. My last point is around on one hand we say, yeah, you need to be committed, you need to be able to see that idea through for the next 10 years, and you need to make that happen. But at the same time, my view is you should know when to stop. You can keep chasing that idea, and at some point of time, you know your gut feel that, this is not working. And I think the best thing you should do is just learn to dump it. And I tell our teams, for every idea that you start, there must be something else that you stop. So people come to me with an idea, and I say, okay, but what are you going to stop doing in the company? I think that's an important call. We should know when to stop throwing good money after bad. Okay? And that's a difficult part, especially when you thought that you're the greatest thing and you're going to make it work. But at some point of time, you need to be very critical in your own assessment and say, okay, guys, it's enough. Time to stop, and let's move on to the next big thing. Okay, so I'll stop there. I wish you all, a lot of luck. I'm assuming there are a lot of entrepreneurs and budding entrepreneurs in this group here. Wish you all the very best, and hope you all make it big. Okay.
Thank you, Aruna. That is very interesting. So few interesting points which Aruna has covered is, even in very large corporations, and quite a few of you are probably working in corporations, corporations have to become agile, nimble, and must have an entrepreneurial kind of an approach for them to survive. And those who are, I think this is very important, those who are pursuing entrepreneurship, it's extremely important for you to be able to make that elevator pitch. That is, in 2 minutes, in 1 minute, can you actually say why you matter? Why should I listen to you? It's very, very, very important. And most of the people, whenever I have had an opportunity to talk to people, youngsters who are doing a great job, but they are unable to actually make that pitch. So it's not only important that you have a great idea, but you are also able to articulate it, and you have to learn to articulate. Actually, I remember somebody saying that I am not prepared for the meeting today, so it will take too long. So if I'm actually prepared, it will take less time. If I'm not prepared, the meeting will take much longer. Similarly, if you get the clarity of what exactly the value that you are going to add to to your customer, you will be able to make that pitch. I think it's important. Thank you. So I will now ask Nandakumar, who is probably the only entrepreneur here who is actually. Yeah. I am a moderator. She has corrected me. So, yeah. No. You want to sit and talk?
Thank you, VK. And my job is to, this is we are talking about startup to IT enterprise, and I've been given the responsibility to give a case study of something which I did, how can it be related to what right from VK painted the opportunity, which is multi-trillion-dollar opportunity, and Chandrasekhar talked about the way of going about it, and both Aruna also talked about it. The point is, how do you do practically these things? So if I can attempt to do something reflecting on what I did, I think I'll be successful in the next 10 minutes. So, okay, with that, let me talk about my journey in the context of what these all of them talked about so far. So I started this journey about 1990s, about 25 years, it's almost 25 years in this entrepreneurship journey. And before that, I worked for a public sector, and I left the job to start this. And got a great opportunity. So this is one of the things which I, again, taking from the crew of the speakers. Again, it is in hindsight. It is the expertise versus enthusiasm. I was very enthusiastic, but expertise was very important. So one of my core capability was I was a good programmer. So I got an opportunity to build a billing system for Indian Telecom at that time. So it was not directly, as a subcontract. So It was a very interesting contract because the contract was given to two companies and said whoever develops a better system will get the rest of the orders in Kerala. There were about 330 telecom districts in the country. So, in Kerala there was about 10 of them. So that was a great potential. But the downside was the project had to be done in 6 months. And every week of delay you had to pay a 1% penalty. So that was the starting point. Fast forward, I took it up, but the fact that you're starting it as an entrepreneur, you don't have anybody to fund, the only option for you is to manage the entire project by yourself. So I decided to program it myself. So that was the starting point. Now, obviously, we become, successful in that context, and got subsequent project. By 1990, I fast forward, there were about 20 systems in the country at that time. But by 1993, our system was selected as the only standard for the country, and that is what implemented throughout India for not BSNL, DOT at that time. There was a billing system for the entire telecom service in the country. This includes, except the metros like Delhi and Mumbai, the rest of the country was adopted the system, and it was we ourselves deployed in about 220 SSAs. They're called secondary switching areas. So in a way, if I really go back and put some management context into it, first is, we talk about agile programming today. So if you really look at the problem, it was to design, study, design, and build, and implement, and produce the output in just 6 months. And you have to do all by yourself. So it's an interesting problem. So naturally, you cannot do magic. So you have to come out with a problem-solving approach, where actually I was using the entire testing by the system itself. I never tested the system other than by automated testing. And the system ran end-to-end at the production. So this was very simple because I was always trying to relate. We always call software engineering. But if you look at the building construction, there is no opportunity for it to build the whole house and then see whether it will stand the weight. So as you build, the system has to be stable and every brick has to be solid. The software can be built that way? That's the way I approach the problem, and been successful in that context. Now fast forward in 2000, we talk about incremental development and all that. So just to put the context in place. Now by 1995, when I exhausted, or not 95, 93, when I exhausted this Indian market, because India opened up only in 1994 for telecom. The only option was to go outside the country. I never had an opportunity to see what is the context outside India, again for telecom. But then one thing which I got fascinated was the potential of creating products. And that too for the enterprise software, because we were hearing the stories of Oracle. We were hearing the stories of Microsoft. So I thought, if you are making a bet, why don't you bet for something big? So the biggest challenge was when you're talking about BSS, it's called BSS system, Business Support System for Telco. And predominantly it was multi-million-dollar licenses, multi-million-dollar deployment cost. And it is predominantly handled by large companies like Lucent and the Ericssons of the world. So here comes the partnership theory. So how do you reach to the market? So you have the capability to do it. So fortunately in India, we were partnering with Tata Unisys. So Unisys got interested, and that's what I adopted, what I took as its channel. Unisys was willing to take us our product across the globe. And I worked with them from 95 to 98 with no success, about 28 bids, and each one of them cost a lot of money. But by the way, my Indian business was going, so that was helping me to run that part of the business. We talked about the importance of the first customer. The customers will never buy a system just because it is extremely good. It also looks at the sustainability of the organization, especially like a system like this, which is the most business critical for a telco, because you spend billions of dollars, and the revenue or the billing system is the one which gives you the ability to build a customer. If that doesn't work, your entire system revenue generation is at risk. So it is not the cost which decides a factor. So we changed the strategy after this 24. We realized that it's a hard factors. We said, can we look for customers who are in distress? What does that mean? That can we look at people who are trying to build, deploy systems, and which is failing? So fortunately, one of our opportunity was, because this is a question of building brand. So you can't go and build a brand. Building a brand in enterprise software means a lot of stuff. I mean, it needs a lot of money. We are not funded, it's all internally funded. So it's a completely, you have to fund yourself. What's the best way to do it? So this is what we did. So look for customers in distress. Fortunately, we come across with another company called Logica, which is one of the largest SI in Europe. This was part of Unisys engagement. The gentleman working with Unisys left Logica, left Unisys and joined Logica. So he gave our capability and what we've been doing in other places to Logica. And they said, if you can do some of the things, what we used to do in those days, when we go to the customer, we always say that we will do the whole thing as a proof of concept. We'll prove that we can do the capability, but still they will not decide. So in this case, we've been successful. They had a customer in distress who had deployed a network in Netherlands and were trying to deploy it for almost 2.5 years, and the system was not coming up. So we took that challenge. We actually replaced that system in 3 months, and that was in partnership with Tata Unisys. Fast forward again, first customer gave us a phenomenal advantage. They became our champion. In 2.5 years, we got 14 customers in Europe, and these all larger telcos. I mean, like Belgacom France, Estonian Telecom, and KPN Telecom, and I don't want to go into the details. But then comes, at this stage, there is another thing happened to us. When we were looking at, we had this fast forward in 5 to 6 years. From Indian context, we went all to the European at those time. That was the melting pot of all the telecom industry. And we saw things dramatically changing every other day. So when you build a product, it has to be adaptive. It has to adapt to the business need on a continuous basis. Every new customer asks for a completely different business model. So when we were trying to do this, we thought, how would you do it? If you can't build every day. So we thought of, why don't we build a platform? We talk about platform building today. So that's what we changed. We changed the whole game into what's not a platform which can build pretty much or price or build any transaction of any industry. So we abstracted the knowledge base from the technology layer. That's basically what we did. And the idea was, and those were the days of .coms, and new ideas were coming up, people wanting to build a lot of new systems, a new business model. So the systems were not traditionally built for monolithic business processes of an industry. So we thought we will make it very flexible, adaptive, and we built the system and went ahead and built the system. That's when the .com bust happened. So most of the customers went into challenge, and out of these 14 customers, we almost lost 10 of them, 10 or 11 of them. Not because of us, because they went out of business. So that's when some of the blue ocean strategy came into existence. I take the morning's discussion saying that it's better you do something which you've not been in. So we thought another industry which could be of highly transaction-oriented is banking. So why don't we take the same philosophy of what the telcos were doing, what they were doing a customer-centric pricing or customer-centric billing rather than product-centric. So if you take the same philosophy to the banking, it's a completely new paradigm shift from what they had been doing. So we went to the banking industry with a philosophy called relationship-based pricing, and that is what we did in 1991. And this was the right time for a European market. That was for Euro compliance. Specifically, many of the banks were rewriting their charging systems. So we adopted that, and there was no such what you call IT spectrum in banking system like enterprise billing platform. So we went with this concept. Initially, it was we were ridiculed, but at some point, people realized the potential. And in 5 years, we got at least 4 of the top 10 banks in the world as our client. So this is all global deployment. So I only want to highlight here one point. There is no, as long as you can understand the customer's need, as long as you can project one of the essence of what you're doing on a global context or in a broader context, you can see more possibilities. You can see white spaces which have not been filled. And added to that, in today's world, the whole landscape is shifting. It's like today's morning, like mountaineering, which Everest climbing talked about. The path which you went forward will not be existing when you're coming down. It is completely shifted. So as long as you know the art of adapting yourself, of becoming relevant to the business, you can always be in business. That's what we did. So today, I can slightly fast forward. We are the largest player in the banking and financial services in this space. There's only 4 or 5 vendors as of right now. Until 2005, 2008, 2007, we didn't have any large major competition. But we also got hit by the other tsunami like 2008 financial crisis when we were going great guns in banking and financial services. And today, fast forward, we have got over. Now the industry understand everything like platform, talks about convergence of industries. We strongly believe that is one of the fundamental causes, because if you really look at any service you are in, you've got products and services and then pricing. These are all 3 aspects. So if you have a flexible context or platform which can meld this on a customer context and customer value base, you can run that platform can be used for basically running any business. So that's the space we are playing in, and this gives you a context of what we did. I don't take more time, just make one more point. I just wanted to reiterate, I think, Chandra, what you said, think big, scale, build capacity. That's one of the key things. I have not gone into that. Probably we can keep that for question and answer. And keep dreaming, stay relevant in your business. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nandakumar. I think it's very interesting. Actually, if I trace everything what Nandakumar said to what the other 2 speakers mentioned, one, identifying the opportunity. And Nandakumar was actually working and building. He saw an opportunity of creating a software for the telecom billing. And he had to be innovative if it has to succeed, because he had only 6 months to deliver. So he went with this concept of testing in production, which is dangerous, but probably okay in India. But anyway, it's innovation and then courage. Then building a brand or actually going global through partnership. Actually, Chandra talked about it. Then the first customer is important, and the first customer becoming an ambassador, because when you're small, that is all what you have. You mess up the first one, then it's very difficult to recover from that. Then moving to the adjacencies, adjacent verticals into the banking sector. And then once, and you always you try to innovate and stay relevant. So I think it's if you take that case study and trace it to everything that we have been talking about, you can really see that that is truly the way to actually go. So now I will invite, I'm just wondering whom to invite. Probably I'll invite for a change. I'll invite Rakesh to come. Rakesh come from an academic background, so let's actually listen to him, and then we will have the big and the last to go with Ravi.
Thank you, VK. Thank you. It's a pleasure being here for this annual conference at ICON. I have a presentation, a very brief one too. Primarily, as he said, probably I am the most misfit among the audience here. I am an academic following the IT industry for now about a decade. I have been in the IT industry for a couple of years with one of the largest companies in India. But then even there, I was trying to do what I am doing now. I am trying to understand the IT landscape. So if you really look at what really makes an IT industry grow from a startup to a digital enterprise, most of the things what people talked about in this panel and what I've been hearing is, primarily, there are a lot of opportunities in the space. There's a lot of potential in terms of the demographic dividend that we have and the skill sets that we are going to build in the next few years. And the third thing that we talked about is technology is pervasive. So it's going to affect all of us. But more importantly, technology is not only pervasive, as an IT industry, but it's going to pervade all the other industries that it would depend on. And thus, it's important to understand also the whole ecosystem, and which Chandra was talking about, on how we should exploit the ecosystems. For me, in the ecosystem space, I would try and focus on one of the aspects, which is called location. The location is a very interesting animal, and most of us undermine the importance of location while making choices in your own enterprises or intraprises, because location actually provides you a lot of things. And the way that we are talking about is, I will shift to the slide directly, which is basically, if you really look at the location, what we are trying to look at is, if you have seen IT industry at $118 billion, we are not looking at this as equally dispersed across all over India. So which means the opportunities are not being exploited equally across various locations. So what we have seen is, primarily 85% to 90% of services are sourced from these big locations, which is Bangalore, Pune, Delhi, Mumbai, Hyderabad, and Chennai. And so one of the important things is this the same if you're a small enterprise? Why should I really bother if I'm in the IT industry? Because the top 20 players really take out a significant market of this $118 billion. So we don't need to really care if we are small, so we can still be as dispersed. But if you really look at the data about startups, even there, we see that primarily 51% of the product companies are based out of Bangalore and NCR, and 72% of startups are also based in major cities. So if the concentration of the IT industry is so huge, is there a chance for emerging destinations or emerging locations? Because a lot of talk is there in NASSCOM and many other places that emerging locations have a lot of potential. So what are the things that emerging locations can offer and do, and what are the entrepreneurs, how do they make their location choices, is one of the pertinent questions to ask. So if you really see the role of, where the dense agglomerations or larger cities is primarily why people move into larger cities, be it the firms, be it individuals. It's primarily because there's the availability of labor, the availability of jobs, the availability of reduced cost of inputs, specialized services, quality physical infrastructure, knowledge and technology spillovers, and the role of competition that you're going to do, and the market demand. So if you really look at our IT industry, what we are trying to look at is all of these forces are tending to make, industry move into few locations. Or is it so? Because we have looked at the governments trying to move into a number of, all the state governments are also competing for IT landscape. So in that manner, government policies are trying to gather more and more IT investment. So, but however, if you really look at a comparison of policies which we have done between Karnataka and Kerala, if you really look at the fiscal incentives, they are nearly the same. In the sense, if you look at fiscal incentives, 30% of fixed capital investment subject to 15 lakh limits. In Kerala, there's land provided at 1 acre per 1,000 jobs, or about rupees 60,000 per employment created. For startup companies, interestingly, the rental rates are similar across Karnataka and Kerala. So what we are looking at, does this mean that there is a policy equivalence across various industries? If there is policy equivalence, people will start to argue there are other differences across locations, because of which we see that IT industry is concentrated in various locations. But if you really look at the comparative assessments that is being made by NASSCOM in its report on emerging delivery locations in India, what we have observed is there is an employee growth, there is a student enrollment growth, attrition is lower in emerging destinations, average rental values are lower in emerging destinations in comparison to the leading destinations. And even the air connectivity is improving. So actually, a lot of emerging destinations are catching up, and thus leading to a cost advantage, which all of you are aware of. So what does that mean? Does that mean that is there a location equivalence that's going to happen, which means the IT industry is going to disperse? Absolutely not. It's not going to disperse. Why? Although we can see that there's a physical infrastructure equivalence across different destinations, because of which you have the rental values coming down and the operational costs coming down, what you don't probably need to realize is what we call as talent equivalence. The talent is not equivalent across destinations. What we mean to say here is that the high-skilled labor is still tending to be in larger locations, and low-skilled labor is what you are getting because of the student enrollment in emerging destinations. The type of talent available is very different. More importantly, is there an infrastructure, social infrastructure equivalence? What I mean here is primarily, if you are really looking at social infrastructure, what we are saying is, are we having the quality hospitals? Are we having the number of beds in quality hospitals? Is there a connectivity? Is there a number of malls? Is there a number of entertainment options available in the destination? Is this what social infrastructure means? Probably not. What we need to understand in social infrastructure is it's a melting pot of cultures. If you really look at Silicon Valley or Route 128, what we see and observe is a melting pot of culture. What you see in most of the leading locations like Bangalore, where cultures mix, and thus you have people from various backgrounds, and the diversity contributes to the knowledge base of the location. So what you primarily look at is the change of role of agglomerations is changing. What are the factors impacting leading destinations are very different. So what we primarily look at is all of these are not going to impact the role of agglomerations and why firms still try and locate in bigger cities, but what is going to remain and impact those the firms are getting impacted is through primarily knowledge. And knowledge by way of people coming together in a particular locations, the type of skills that are available, the diversity of knowledge bases that are available, and the role of competition. So this is what is driving firms to locate into bigger regions. So in that case, what should entrepreneurs do? And if that means, if this is going to be the case, that's going to drive firms into larger locations, does that mean the performance of firms are going to be significantly different across various emerging locations and leading locations? What we have done is a study, and that study showed us on IT industry, and what we got was an interesting result. Firms in Bangalore are primarily the firms which will have higher productivity and will do it by providing high-valued services, whereas firms outside Bangalore have a choice to make. And the choice is whether they want to continue to provide low-value skill services or do something different completely, as some of my earlier speakers talked about, than what the Bangalore or any other leading location would have as a comparative advantage. So this is one of the things that our finding was of the study is. A second study, and if there's emerging locations, entrepreneurs in emerging locations want to locate themselves, continue themselves in the emerging locations, then how do they make the choices? The choices are primarily, if you really see, firms in emerging locations are driven through ethnic networks. And we call ethnic networks as people having a connection to the region, and ethnicity is an important factor to enable you to access those services that are available, the low-cost resources that are available. Ethnic resources or ethnic networks helps you leverage those resources to build performance. And besides, there is also one more thing. One of the other studies that we done, what we also find out is whenever the ethnic resources does not match, firms tend to move into leading destinations, which means entrepreneurs who tend to come into emerging destinations, if they are not ethnically rooted, they tend to actually move into leading destinations. More importantly, we also find that firms which have certain key kinds or looking for certain key capabilities tend to move into those clusters, which means there is also a locational advantage in terms of the capabilities. And these capabilities are not fungible across locations, which means they cannot be moved across locations. So what we mean to say is that because of the sticky nature of capabilities, firms tend to move into those locations. So what does this mean for an entrepreneur typically located in emerging locations such as Kochi? Because I'm trying to address an audience which is primarily based out of Kochi. What I'm looking at is, if you have as an implication for the entrepreneur, you have low-value services and high-value services, and you have very routine capabilities that most of these high valued, most of the locations can offer, and you have some creative capabilities. So emerging destinations can tend to focus only on low value services and tend to focus on routine capabilities, entrepreneurs in emerging locations, or they can look at creative capabilities. Let me explain what I mean by creative capabilities. Creative capabilities are those capabilities that are sticky to that particular location. For example, if you really look at Pune, Pune as a cluster or as a city has developed primarily on not only IT, but also about other industries, which is primarily automotive and pharmaceuticals. So if you're looking at pharmaceutical and automotive, or pharmaceuticals because of the chemical industry there, so automotive and pharmaceuticals are two industries that dovetailed the knowledge base of those industries was dovetailed into the IT industries. And so the type of services that are on offer in those locations are primarily oriented towards automobile, which is CAD, CAM, and other such engineering services. So similarly, you can have other locations such as Kochi, which can probably look at, I don't have any other better thing than look at VK, which is travel and tourism, which is primarily, a significant factor in Kochi as a destination. There's another thing that we can look at is banking, because banking is very huge and significant. The way mid-sized banks operate in Kochi is very different, or Ayurveda. So those knowledge bases of other industries are equally important for you to make a mark in your own entrepreneurship journey. So what I mean to say eventually is, so we have to focus as an entrepreneur on how to make your choice of location in your journey of entrepreneurship. And that should be a key success factor which will help you drive the enterprise. Thank you.